This is a review of the season. Just a little bit of background first of all. I'm old enough to remember the very first football management computer game, which was called, I think, Football Manager, done by a guy called Kevin Toms for a computer called the ZX Spectrum, which for those of you youngsters out there had a total memory of 48K. That is not even the size of a small picture that you get these days on computers, but that was the entire memory, and yet he still managed to make a exciting and compelling football managing game. Then in the early 90s, in a second-hand computer game shop, I stumbled across a game called Football Manager and Italian Leagues 1993, I think it was called, and I bought it. And it was amazing, and I have had every edition of Football Manager since, and it obviously keeps getting better and better, keeps getting more and more realistic, to the degree now that you can spend a lifetime on it if you actually did every part of it in the full depth. However, I do have a life, and therefore I just limit it and don't get into so much detail. So those of you who are very keen on Football Manager and younger and have more time can tell me, I'm sure, in comments, etc., what I'm missing or what I'm not doing manager for Norwich. Anyway, as we can see here on the post, something of a shock. Chris Hughton having just been appointed, but he was kicked out, and I was brought in. I say it was something of a shock, but compared to Nigel Atkins being sacked by Southampton, I guess this is some sort of normality. So I took over a Norwich side. I don't have a list of the team, but those of you who follow football will know the players they had at the time. And the first thing I had to do was reconcile the fact that the board wanted me to avoid relegation, and they were giving me a transfer budget of £3.5 million and a wage budget of, I think, 315,000, which is a huge step down from when I was on Football Manager 2011, managing Newcastle. Wage budget was, I think, 600 and odd thousand, and they gave me 20 million to battle bravely against relegation. So you can see that Norwich are a club run on a budget, and when I looked at the average wages, the highest earner was Basong on 25,000, which for a Premiership club, I haven't been through them all on Football Manager, but I would be staggered if there was a club with a lower wage bill than Norwich at the start of Football Manager. And I quite like that, because I like the challenge of keeping the wage budget low, and I think one of the things that can kill you in Football Manager is if you start a wage war and you bring in one expensive fella on high wages, and then everybody wants a raise, and the thing spirals out of control, and wages seem to be less important than transfer fees, but when you actually get out a calculator and do the maths, if you're quite sad like I am, in fact it's wages that hit you. So okay, enough of looking at one screen. Let's have a look now and see if we can look at my transfer history, because that at least will be able to show who I brought in that season. Now if I click on here, and we're looking for 2012 to 13. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. And we can see here one of the first things you do is try and get rid of the players that you don't think you're going to use. Now we'll move on to tactics shortly, but my philosophy and way of playing and preferred tactic is to play without wide players, without wingers or indeed wide midfielders. I like to have fullbacks coming up and crossing, but otherwise playing fairly narrow. So having looked at the squad, I thought one of the things I should try and do is earn a bit of money. Now the chairman had told me that I could only get 15% of transfers coming in to use for to reuse it for my own transfers. And I could have argued with that, and I think I probably would have got somewhere, but equally I didn't want to put the club in financial straits. I thought that's part of my role here, to be fiscally prudent, as Gordon Brown would have it. So accepting that I'd only get 15% of these fees to reinvest, I set about offloading those who I didn't think I'd be able to use, even though they might be good players. You can see here Elliot Bennett is an attacking midfielder on the right, and a season on he's valued at 3.4 million. Well, I got 4 million for him, so I'm happy enough with that. David Fox, he's gone to Wigan. Well, now he was a defensive midfielder, but I didn't think he was anything special, and he's 29 there, and again I thought I was happy enough with 3 million for him. Russell Martin, right-sided defender. Now this was a bit of a gamble, but I just, again, I thought I would take the money for him. This did leave me without a right-sided defender, which I'll come back to in a moment. I offloaded Simeon Jackson, who I did not think was a Premier level striker by any stretch of the imagination. What's he valued at now? 2.6 million. I got 1.6. Well, fair enough. I got him off the wage bill. And Leon Barnett, he is another central defender who, again, 27. And looking at those stats, you can see here tackling of 12, concentration of 11. That's not Premier level quality. Certainly not good enough to be in my team. So I thought I'll take the money. A couple of loan signings there, and last offloading was another left-sided player, again on the wrong side of a peak for an attacking player. And look at those stats, very, very mediocre. What's he worth? 1.1 million, and what did I get? I got 750,000, did I? So again, I'll take that. It meant he was off the wage bill. It meant I brought in some money. So those were the summer transfers going out. So looking at who came in, well, we'll look at who came in a second. But I think what I might do now is move to the tactics screen and looking at the formation. This isn't the standard formation I use. In fact, let's revert to my standard one, which is that, and how I like to play. Now, a lot of people spend ages on tactics and send lists onto forums saying this is a perfect tactic that you can use to beat any team anywhere. And A, it usually isn't true, and B, that's sort of like people who do lists of wonder kids and lists of the best players and go into the database and see who's going to be the best players and then sign them and then post about it and other people read them, and I may be old-fashioned, but I've never done any of that. To me, if I don't know the player in real life, or my scouts haven't found him on a scouting mission that I've sent them on, then he's not coming in. And with tactics, again, I don't tend to fiddle very much with the standard tactics. And I took Newcastle to the Champions League in FM 2011, so if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I like this kind of 4-1-3-2 formation. Again, the players have all changed, but you can see that that's the formation with fullbacks who can get forward and get crosses in. Defensive midfielder, you can specify every kind of detail of the role they've got and whether they within that are taking a defensive view or a supporting view, or up front whether it's an attacking or a supporting role, etc. So I was going for that. So I'd sold my right back, which quickly became apparent perhaps wasn't the best decision I'd ever made. I also, looking at the squad, felt that I needed one further central midfielder to boost the squad, just so I had spare in case of injuries. And what I really needed, what I really felt I needed, was a world-class striker, or at least a high Premier League class striker, because I just felt that Holt was the only half-decent striker. He was ageing, and I felt they needed a real level of quality. So, and again, I was trying to keep within the wage structure and make sure nobody was going above Bassong's 25,000. So, who did I bring in? Well, first of all, I brought in Ruben Yttergaard Jensen, who I hadn't heard of in real life. I'll hold my hands up on that. But I think my scouts found him on a mission I sent them on, or I may have done a player search with certain attributes, and he's come on a little bit in the year that I've had him, because he's young enough that he's still able to, with good training, to progress. But you can see, even if you take a little bit away from these, from where he was when he came in, he's proven to be a great buy, which is you know, I don't buy unless I'm confident. Again, I could see when I bought him, because the season had started in December in Tromps, you know, that he had a great average rating, which is usually a good sign. 3.7 million, I think, was an absolute bargain. We can see here, if we look at him and see that he is a professional. So again, people have their own thoughts on these. Some people will only buy players who are resolute or spirited, and those are great. And yes, you don't want to be buying players who are only fairly professional, or who are, you know, so in other words, likely to be temperamental. But he's professional, and he's clearly got a good average rating as well as good stats, and the scouts liked him, and I liked him, so I bought him in for 3.7 million. Which was great. I then decided that I needed a backup for Holt in case he got injured, a backup target man, and that's where we've brought in Mamadi Sidibe from Stoke. Possibly may have been seen as bizarre, because he hadn't really been doing much for Stoke, but again, I liked his stats. I thought he could do a job, and in fact he actually exceeded my expectations. And without giving too much away, we can see here that in his time at Norwich, he made 24 appearances for us with 7 goals, 7 assists, twice man of the match, and average rating of 7.21. So I have absolutely no complaints. For a minimal loan fee of 1.5k a month and pretty low wages, that was great. Now you'll see here that by the time the season started, those were the only signings I'd been able to make. So the next thing I'm going to do very quickly is have a look at the fixtures, and we can see how the season started. Let's have a look here. And if, as they say on the Sporting Things, if you don't want to know the result, look away now. But this was the opening game of the season. Again, look away now if you don't want to know the score. And I'm going to bring on the highlights, and we can have a quick look at this. This was our first game of the season, and at this point we had no right back. Had to put in a reserve guy who was absolutely not ready for first team football, and never would be. I ended up offloading him at the end of the season. And again, we had no decent striker. We had Steve Morrison, who is a kind of championship level striker in the game, and Sidibe and Holt, but they're sort of the same type of players. Anyway, when the computers finally decided to get going, the result was a very different matter. So Kagawa back to Scholes. Scholes looking for a man, finds Carrick free. Carrick plays it sensibly out to Raphael on the wing, and here is Raphael. He's looking for an option. He can see he's got Nani. Nani plays a clever ball into the box. There's Rooney, and it's all too easy for Manchester United. Ruddy looks disappointed. His defenders hold their heads in their hands, but Man United getting through with consummate ease there, and looking at manager Symington's face, it could be a long, hard season. Now here's Scholes with the corner, the seemingly ageless Scholes, and frankly, look at the defending on that. Absolutely shocking, Alan. There's not a man within half a mile of him there, free to head in. So surely United coasting to victory. Now they hit the bar about 8 times in the meantime. But here's Tetty for Norwich. Yttergaard Jensen, their new signing, plays a good ball to this McNeil, a reserve right back who nobody's heard of. But he at least manages to find Yttergaard Jensen, and they exchange passes while looking for some sort of option. Here's Tetty. Tetty finds Howson. Howson to Morrison. They are passing it around quite nicely, Norwich. Finally, here's Holt teeing up Houlihan. And Norwich have got one back, and that's a bit of a shock there. United, I think, have turned off. They've had so much of the play, so much of the pressure, and it looked like it could be about 8-0. They've hit the bar and everything, and suddenly they've switched off at the back. Still, surely nothing in the world could possibly stop them. Surely Norwich won't score a ridiculous